I'm just going to admit the last few more people coming in and share my screen. So welcome to our book launch and an incredible first session in conversation session with Katherine as a part of a series of 4 to celebrate the launch of the book series with Rutledge on wellbeing and self-care in higher education and embracing positive solutions. So excited to put these events together and to be working with you all and to be celebrating what we can do in terms of our well-being and self-care and how we approach it in our work world. So today we have a great in conversation, which is about writing well and being well in academia. And we're going to be a little bit practical as well as conversational. But before we do that, I would just like to say that today you will have myself, so Narelle Lemon, hello, lovely to be here with you. And we've got Katherine Firth as well. And we will also hear from Villiers Stevens from Rutledge as well, who will give us a bit of an intro as well in a moment. But before we do, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we join today and from where you are all joining us as well. And I really want to pay my respects to elders, past, present and future, and extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So today's in conversation is really coming from a basis where we're making no assumptions. Everybody has different lived experiences, are in different career stages, have different experiences with well-being. And so I just want to acknowledge that we're all different and we want to celebrate this. And that really brings perspective and open-mindedness. And so with that comes very much the position that we work from a space of mutual respect, right to pass, in terms of we're not having a conversation or Q&A with this session today. So you have mutual respect in terms of, and right to pass in terms of how you participate, videos off, muted, all of that sort of aspect. But of course, if we mention anything that might trigger something for you, please do feel free to leave. And we hope that you've got support for you to be able to process that. But of course, you are more than welcome to reach out to Katherine or I, and we can assist you as well. There's no judgment. We're all about deep listening. We're very much about opening up the conversation about how we position wellbeing in higher education and what that can look like. And with that, of course, comes courage and curiosity. And I think that will very much come through today's in conversation session, but also comes through the whole in conversation series and really the series itself. So I'm so excited because in 2019-20, Villia and I were talking about doing something together and wanted something about well-being. And I was like, well, hey, what about a book series where we start to really hear about stories that are a bit different, that we move the conversation from behind closed doors, from being shamed, from thinking we're alone, from being uncertain, to not really having access to other people's perspectives, tips, proactive actions. And so the book series was born, and a magnificent call out for chapters was able to put together essentially what will become the first 4 books. So the first 2 books are out, which is just lovely. I can line it up on the screen, which is so exciting. And we'll hear from authors from these 2 books over these 4 events. The next 2 books are literally, as of yesterday, going to press, which is really exciting. And we're hoping that they will be available in August, which is incredibly exciting. And we have 4 other books at various different stages, of which Katherine is one of those. And there's a few other books as well in review proposal stages. So it's a magnificent amount of authors coming through from different perspectives, from different disciplines, from international perspectives, sharing voice, most importantly, about well-being, self-care, how we do it, what does it look like, how do we meaningfully address our well-being in a climate that sometimes isn't quite supportive of us. That's my politically correct way of saying sometimes it sucks, and we know it really does suck. And we want to really disrupt that conversation. So, and we've got authors from very, very different countries, but also career stages as well. PhD students right through to professors, senior leaders, emerging leaders, scholars who are absolutely embrace learning and teaching, and others that are research focused as well. So it's really, really exciting, the diversity that's coming through. Most importantly, we're thinking about self-care, that it is not selfish, that it is most definitely worthy of our attention, and it's something that we should not hide, be shamed for, or ignore. And that's a through line that comes very much through our beautiful series as well. And we very much position self-care as being relational. We cannot do it without others. We do our well-being with others. People support us, people inspire us, we get ideas from others. And so it very much places that relational sitting there, which is a beautiful through line that comes through. So cover-wise, I just showed you our first two books that are out, that came out last year, which is Magnificent, the yellow and the red, yellow and the blue book, as I call it. And the pink and the green book are the ones that are just about to come out, due out in August, which is really exciting. And very, very much had the pleasure of editing those collections to bring authors together. And the most exciting thing in relation to Katherine today is her cover, which we just signed off on, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, Katherine, which is really exciting. And a set of 3 other books that are coming out as well that will be with us within the sort of next 12-ish months or under, so which is really, really exciting, by other authors and teams internationally based. And today we'll be focusing very much on content that will have a little snapshot, a showcase of what will come through from Katherine's book with Writing Well and Being Well for your PhD and beyond. And I just love the colours. They're bright, they're sassy, they pop off our bookshelves. We're going to be proud to have them on our desks. We're going to have them, you know, sticky noted like I do. I have quite a few sitting there. They inspire us, and they really go through with that idea that we shouldn't be hiding our well-being and our self-care, and that we can be proactive and we can have those conversations with each other when you find your tribe to be able to do that. So the book series is very much about diverse voices. It's supporting colleagues from different career trajectories. There's mentoring in and across the experience of writing. For many authors, this is the first time they've written a book chapter. For others, it's the first time they've written with multiple authors. And it's very much supporting that development of a wellbeing literacy. And that occurs when we're as authors have been sharing our own stories, but then also that flow and effect when somebody else reads that chapter and talks about it. There's a couple of times some colleagues have emailed me and have done some reading groups around some chapters, and so talking through the themes that have been in the chapter and coming through. So there's such an amazing ripple effect and domino effect in terms of the wellbeing literacy that's been occurring. And we're very much about forming a community. So we've been a community for each book as a set of authors. We've supported each other. We've peer reviewed. We've been a part of the exciting part of responding to peer reviews, celebrating our words on a page where you read something and go, whoa, did I write that? That's really cool. And very much supporting each other as we go through the editing process as well. So it's also, you know, such a beautiful way of supporting how we want to be with each other in academia as well. And so there's some of the breakdowns of authors and who's involved in the international stats and the doctoral stats there. And I'm so excited to see that so many of our authors have been sitting in the doctoral student stage and really building their capacity to write, to be a part of beautiful publishing experiences, but also to share voice as well and to empower your peers too. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I am absolutely delighted to be able to say that I'm excited to share the book series and little snapshots of you today with you today. And I'm really excited for Katherine also to share her insights into what she's going to be writing as well. But before we do that, I'm going to invite Vilya to just say a couple of words.
Thanks, Narelle. Hi, everyone. As Narelle mentioned, I'm Vilya Stevens, the editor in Education and Behavioural Sciences at Routledge here in Australia. And Narelle mentioned we've been working on the idea for this series for quite a while. And I was going through my notes, and I think it was actually at a conference in Sydney in 2018 that we had a cup of tea and really started to have a chat about this, and it grew and grew and grew. And it's so exciting now to have upwards of 8 books at different stages of development. It's a young series, but it's really full of energy. Narelle's done such a great job to bring it together, and I think it's a really unique series. It's immersed in research and literature, but it's really communicating its message through stories, strategies, lived experience, to guide the reader to ensure that well-being is protected and cultivated in the very unique environment that you're all in academia, at whatever stage of your career. I've worked with academics as authors and series editors for many years now, and I guess from the other side, I can appreciate the demands of the work that you do. So I think this is a really important series, giving back to each other in a really special way. So I'm so pleased to be here today. Thank you for having me. And I think that's enough from me. I'll throw back to Narelle and Katherine to start the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Vilya. Beautiful words. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to spotlight Katherine, and I'll spotlight myself so we can bounce off each other. I'm like the one-handed one-person show here, so bear with me as I talk through all of this, which is wonderful. So, Katherine, your book, it's you're in the writing stages. It's coming together. We've had lots of conversations about the vision and what's going to be in it and what we want it to be. So, tell us, what is your vision?
So, this book, I think, in part comes out of a lot of the thinking I've been doing on my blog, Research Degree Insiders, for a long time. It comes out of some of the implicit stuff that I've written in some of my more problem-focused academic writing books, things like How to Fix Your Academic Writing Trouble or Your PhD Survival Guide, that were really, and even Level Up Your Essays, they were all really sort of about starting where things weren't working very well and, how to resolve them, which I think is important. But I was really coming to think about how academic writing is a problem. We address it as a problem. You buy a book like this because you're having a problem. I mean, to be honest, you come to a workshop that I run because you're having a problem with it. But also, it needn't be a problem. Like, I was taught that the whole life of the mind meant that I sort of had to downplay, my emotions, to be less emotional, to be, for my physical stuff to be kind of, need to put on hold while I focused on writing. And then as a writer myself, including while I was doing my PhD, I found that actually when I paid attention to my feelings in my body and in my heart, my writing was more successful. I had more fun. It was much less painful, but also, like, I wrote faster. I was more productive. My voice was clearer. My writing was more elegant. As a writer now, I find like things get published when I'm well, and when I'm not, things sort of just don't make it out the door. So I really think that being well and writing well needn't be in opposition. They could be, those two things could be friends. And I really wanted to write a book that focused on all the things that writing is, all those stages of writing, and how we could be well in our heads, be well in our bodies, and do really good writing. Yeah.
I love that so much. I love that so much. And so important, because we often don't talk about that, and they often sit sort of in conflict to each other, don't they? It's like, oh, I don't feel well, but I've got to push my way through work. I've got to push my way through writing. I've got a deadline for my PhD. I've got a deadline for my book chapter. I've got to do the reviews. And, if we tune into, if we're not feeling that great and we go into that action, I think most of us would admit that our new words are not the most fabulous that we've ever produced. Our thinking, tracing that through the narrative is not spectacular. It may be actually we stare at the screen and 3 hours later, you're like, man, I don't even know what I just achieved then.
And in my PhD, I had a community garden at the bottom of our road. And every time I got stuck, I would go put on my gumboots. This was the UK, so they were Wellington boots, but they're the same thing, and go down to the end of the road and dig like potato trenches or something. And then I'd come back and, you know, those 3 hours later, I'd be covered in mud. I'll have looked at some natural stuff. I breathed some fresh air. I'd done something with my body, and I'd sit down and I'd look at this tangle, this completely impossible thing, and go, why is that hard? It's obvious what I should write next, and go on. Whereas if I sat there and tried to like slog through the writing, when the writing was not coming, then what happened at the end of those 3 hours was not clarity and energy and, you know, problem solving. It was just more sadness. Yeah. So like, I definitely found that myself, that paying attention to your cues was really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so important. Okay, so I think you're going to run through a couple of practical exercises with us.
I am. So in the book, what we've done is each chapter is a stage of the writing process. And for each stage of the writing process, I have a physical well-being exercise and a mindfulness well-being exercise. And if you're like, but I don't exercise and I don't meditate, that is fine. You'll see the things, the kind of thing that we're going to do is very accessible, very practical. They're not just well-being exercises, they're well-being exercises that are writing exercises. And then in a moment, then I'll talk about some writing stuff that you'll see is also well-being stuff. Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Right, shall we go? Awesome. Okay, so the thing that I thought we'd start with is to start with chapter 3, which is the chapter about actually writing words on a blank page. This physical practice is about getting comfortable for writing, but I thought it adapted really well for online seminars like this. So this is an encouragement to kind of check in with where you are and how you are. I'll ask a whole load of questions, sort of prompts for thought, and then there will be a moment for you to actually take action. So we'll run through this list of things that you might do to make yourself feel maybe 5 to 10% more comfortable, maybe 5 to 10% more productive. Not a forever plan, just for the next, 3/4 of an hour or so. And if at any stage of our time together you decide that it will help to change things up again, please do. Some other questions to start with. Where could you work? Inside or outside? In the office? In your car? In the kitchen? What furniture setup will be the most supportive for about the next hour? Desk and chair, sofa, kitchen table, bed, floor? What accessories will be most supportive for the next hour? What about cushions? What about blankets? I've put on a wrap. Footstools, lap trays, laptop stands. What visual aids will be the most supportive for the next hour? What about lights? What about lamps? What about glasses? What hearing aids will be most supportive for the next hour? Headphones, speakers, maybe closing a door, maybe adjusting the volume. What about smells? Do you have a scent that helps you get into the mood? Maybe a scented candle. Or would you like more fresh air? Is there something in the room you might want to remove so it doesn't smell? What food and drink will be most supportive for the next hour? Tea, coffee, soda, water, snacks, meal, chocolate, gum. Are you actually hungry? Do you want a stimulant or something mellow? Do you want something kind of to play with? What other living beings will be most supportive for the next hour? Is your pet a help? What about kids or partners or housemates or colleagues? Would an absence of other people help? Is that something that maybe you could make happen? What temperature will be the most supportive for the next hour? Is it time to open or close a window? Turn off the heating or turn on a fan? throw in a pair of gloves or take off the hoodie. What else will help you feel more physically supported in this space? Maybe you wish you had some hand cream or a throat pastille or a bathroom break. Maybe it's hard to take notes or there are too many empty coffee cups on the desk. So now is a chance, having thought about all of those things, to do it. Move to the place if that would help. Set up the space to support you. Collect everything you need. Remove things you don't need. Shut doors, open windows, move things around, draw boundaries, welcome things in. I'm going to pause for a minute, and please take a moment to, do whatever it is that will help for this next minute. I am going to drink some water. And check the chat. People are saying beautiful things in the chat. It's lovely. I do find that this kind of environment scan, body scan, can be really helpful to adjust things, not to necessarily change everything, but just to kind of get things into a slightly different space. Yeah. One of my favorite yoga teachers does this. Can you get 5 to 10% more comfortable? And I'm like, oh, that's good. Because yes, I could do that. Could I be 100% more comfortable? No. Could we be 5% more comfortable? Yes. Okay, welcome back. I hope you actually did take that moment to adjust, to make things so that you will have well-being in this space for the next little bit. So let's take a deep breath. Let's settle into this space of listening for you and talking for me, arranging your body in the furniture, arranging your tools on the working surface, making any last adjustments. Maybe clean your glasses, maybe tilt the angle of your screen, push up your sleeves, take a sip of water. Let's go. And so now that we're set up, the next thing I'm going to talk about is a mindfulness practice. And the one that I'm going to explore here today together is a gratitude practice from chapter 7, the chapter where we talk about feedback and rewriting. Rewriting is a hard, sort of complicated part of the writing process for me, because things feel pretty negative sometimes. Perhaps the feedback you got was challenging, or you're doing that last look through for all those last errors, or reviewer one was grumpy, which was a thing that I have just gone through with an academic book I'm writing. And yet there's also so much you've already achieved at this stage. And this is, of course, the stage of a book or a thesis where you should be writing or updating the acknowledgements. And having just done this with a co-author, I realized how much an acknowledgement section is, in fact, a list of things to be thankful for, a list of people and institutions and supports. And so this is a gratitude list that I wrote, a kind of informal, unconstrained, kind of honest first draft of a gratitude list before writing a formal acknowledgement. Having a practice of gratitude is a really great way to acknowledge work that's been done, which is something that we often are kind of tend to forget. We're so busy at looking at what's still to do that we forget what we've already done. And at the end of a writing process, that we have done so much. And practices of gratitude are also generally, associated with good emotions and mood and stuff. So, you get a bit of a draft done, you realize you're actually done quite a good job, and you're like doing good things for your mental health. It does need to be authentic though. So the things that I'm saying are mine. They may or may not be relevant to you, but they might help spring some thoughts moving forward that might work for you. Here's a gratitude list I wrote that includes some of the things that might make it to an acknowledgement and quite a few that aren't. And yeah, I'm grateful for. Actually, I'm grateful for my supervisor. I haven't been in a PhD for nearly 15 years now. I'm grateful for a supervisor who got what I was trying to say and gave me tools to say it more clearly. I'm grateful for co-authors who get what I'm trying to say and give me space to work out how to say it well. I'm grateful for editors who get what I'm trying to say and fix my work so it actually says it. I'm grateful for peer reviewers who don't get what I'm trying to say and give me feedback so I know what's not communicating. I'm grateful for computers who take the work of spell checking and footnoting and sharing and saving my work and make it instant and invisible. I'm grateful for librarians who put relevant books together on shelves, so when I go to pick up one book for my research, I find another dozen nearby. I'm grateful for archivists who spend months digitizing material, so when I need it, it's there in seconds. I'm grateful for colleagues who are delighted to grab a coffee on campus as soon as the cafes are open again. I'm grateful for scholarships and prizes and grants that have offered me the chance to study and travel and buy books and sometimes just live. I'm grateful to Shut Up and Write buddies over the years, some of whom are here tonight, who helped me get writing done when the writing was hard to get to. I'm grateful to the members of my reading groups and special interest groups, some of whom are also here tonight, who keep me up to date in the field. I'm grateful for my non-human writing companions, particularly the black cats, who have only interrupted my work in ways that have provoked creativity. I'm grateful for everyone who ever posted a video explainer about how to move and stretch after I've spent too many hours at my desk. I'm grateful for the people who buy, read, or review my books and blog, who inspire me to keep going. And I'm grateful to you, audience, who've come to this event, whether you're here synchronously or you'll be watching later asynchronously. I'm grateful to Narelle for hosting. I'm grateful to Routledge for publishing the book. I'm grateful to the graphic designer who put together the beautiful cover. I'm grateful for so many things, and thank you all for being part of it. That's yes, it's really one of the things that's really nice about this, and actually I was able to see Narelle's face. I'm not keeping an eye on everybody's face while I'm talking, but I could see Narelle's face, and the way that she just sort of started smiling as I was rehearsing this gratitude thing actually, I think, really speaks to that thought that Narelle was saying before about how well-being is a social practice. And so many people contribute to our well-being, and also that in a gratitude or an acknowledgement section, we give back some of that well-being. And that actually sometimes we think of a thesis or an academic book or a journal article as being sort of the opposite of these practices, but actually these generous practices are built in to the true way of being an ethical academic. And I think we have time for two little practices from the blog. What do you think, from the book?
I think so, totally. I think we're also zen and grounded from your modeling the gratitude practice with us, that I think we've so got time. Yes, let's make it happen.
Awesome. Okay, so the first thing that I thought I'd share today is some of the writing advice is from the first chapter, where we think about reading as part of the writing process. Often we think we've learned to read by the time we're about 8. We know that we have to continue to learn to write, and that the thesis is a major writing task that we have to learn how to succeed in. And there's lots of books and advice and workshops out there on improving doctoral writing. I've written a few, I've given a few, but there's a lot of the difficulties that doctoral students have in getting started and in powering through the slow middle and getting to completion are actually caused by reading. So reading well can transform our writing. And yet, according to Cisco in 2020, in an article published in 2020, reading can actually prompt feelings of being an imposter in graduate students. And students with that imposter syndrome, and I hope this is not too triggering for anybody, say things like, I really should have known this. How do you not know these things? That they say to themselves. Am I the only one that doesn't have an inkling what that means? I never completely understand what I read. Am I smart enough to pull out what somebody else would see as important? And what these students show in their self-description of their reading is that they see reading as an intelligence test. And to be fair, they probably learn that from school. As a graduate student, you've been a smart person all your life, and that self-perception can be challenged by your current research. The students in this study also were showing traits of what we technically call a fixed intelligence mindset. With people with a fixed mindset see intelligence as an innate characteristic. You're smart or you're not. So if you're failing at the reading intelligence test, that proves you're not smart and certainly not smart enough for a PhD. And that would be terrifying. And fortunately, it's not true. Academic intelligence and learning are absolutely things you can be taught. You can learn, you can develop. I'm still learning, I'm still developing. Realizing this and acting in this way is what's called a growth mindset. And if you have a growth mindset, then the text you don't understand, the concept you can't get is an opportunity to develop, not a judgment on your capacity. So if you make a mistake, it's a chance to fix it, to try again, to have another go. And in academia, we call this the experimental method. And it's the basis of everything we do. The graduate degree is not a test of whether or not you already know this. It's a chance to get to know this, whatever this might be. And of course, the point of a research degree is to create new knowledge. To do that, you need to be curious and experimental. If smart people already know that, it's not new knowledge. If everyone knows that, it's not a unique contribution. And so people who are trying to read perfectly or feel like an imposter if they read imperfectly are trying to read like a good student, a well-behaved, passive recipient of great knowledge. But that's not the best or even a good way to read. And people often bristle at this kind of statement. But, I have a PhD in English literature. My first degree was at Cambridge University, where they absolutely believed that everyone needed to learn how to read for academic purposes. They were like, hello, yes, you do not know how to read. Let me teach you how to read. So a lot of the advice I'm giving is what I got there. This is how to read. This is what you will be told if you go and see an academic skills advisor, which I used to be. So trust me with this one. What are some of the things we might therefore want to unlearn about how we think about reading? We might have been taught to read texts at high school and as an undergraduate, all in the same way. You get you get your reading list, you read it all, you know it's important, you know it all matters, so you read it all really carefully. In a PhD, you really can't do that with everything. You will need to do it with some stuff. I do poems. I also read theory, and those you have to take slowly. If you're in a field like maths or science where you miss a sigma or a 2 and everything stops working or blows up, like please read those carefully. But the majority of your research you really can glance at. You'll find that your supervisor will use words like, it might be worth your while quickly flicking through this article. That does not mean spend 2 weeks reading it. That means literally quickly flick through the article. And you'll miss things out, and that will be okay. It's a PhD, not a Nobel Prize, as Mullins and Kiley remind us. And your examiners are expecting that you'll miss some things, because you only have 100,000 words max, total max, which is nothing compared to all knowledge, even to all vaguely relevant knowledge. Your thesis is supposed to make this limited and incremental contribution to your field, and that means some of what will happen will be small. There will be a tiny number of texts you might need to go back to, and that's okay. And if the article really does matter, your supervisor or your examiner will point it out. That's what edits and revisions are for. It will normally be quite a small number. Our revisions for our book, what was the main thing we had to do? Add to the literature review. It's fine. It did not take very long. It was not very painful. Keep writing. You will forget some of the things you read, and that's okay. Make notes about it, but also don't try and remember everything. Let it go. It's all right if some of that disappears. Keeping the main points is essential. Nearly everything else is inessential. It's really surprising how it's focusing on the core is what's really important. It's okay to skim read. Use Control F to find things. Use the index. Glance over stuff, use topic sentences, read the metadata, read the title, read the abstract, read the headings. Maybe there's some places where you need to slow down, go really deep. There's a lot of places, if you know that you don't need to read chapter 2, skip chapter 2. If I wrote chapter 2, I will not mind. Please just, like, do this, because the thing that matters in this kind of scholarly reading is that you, not the author, are in control of the speed and length of reading. You are in control because you're becoming the expert. So how do I read? Ooh, all sorts of ways. I read like it's an adventure. I read promiscuously. I read around the text. I just read the index. I skim read. I start with the Wikipedia page and come back and try again. Theory, always start with the Wikipedia page. Put the text down and come back in 10 years. I read it really slowly. I read it out loud. I listen to somebody else read it to you. Audiobooks count as reading. I skip to the end. I find something else I like and read that instead. Sometimes I read it 10 times. Sometimes I only read the introduction. Different strategies will work for different texts and for the different reasons that you're reading the text, but every one of these is a valid and useful strategy, and I've used them all regularly. Reading is as nuanced and flexible a skill as writing or teaching. Unlike teaching or writing a great big long thesis, you've probably been doing it for a long time. So give yourself permission to do it imperfectly, and you will do it better. However you get there, seeing academic reading as an experiment, an adventure, and a chance to learn new things will make your reading, writing, and speaking more enjoyable, and also set you up for success for your academic future. So if that first part of this felt familiar to you, might be a chance to have a go at changing your reading mindset. How are we doing for time? Yes, I think we're still fine. Good.
We're so fine. So fine.
I keep worrying about the timing. I don't want you all not to, like, here we are doing, it's very important when I'm doing all of this stuff about like self-care and making sure that you stop on time and having a break. But I think everybody should, in fact, I think we're so fine that if anybody did need to adjust, I'm going to turn off my heater, have a glass of water.
You've just inspired, like reading through the chat, and just have inspired so many of us to rethink how we don't have to be perfect. Imperfection is fine. And sort of pairing with the gratitude exercise as well, Katherine, in giving permission to really care for ourselves and go, I'm going to put new words down. I'm going to read some new things. I might not understand it, but as I write about it and process it and get feedback, it's permission to be imperfect as we land it. And sometimes we'll land it maybe in a week, 6 months. It could be 6 years.
I had one of the things that I said, I'm going to put this down and come back to it, is some Foucault that I put down and came back to it. And yeah, I recently published a book chapter on it. I've got another article about there's a lot of Foucault happening in my life right now. So, it doesn't go away. It doesn't become a problem. It's in no way a retreat. It's just a finding the time and the rhythm when it's right for you.
Beautiful.
So the next thing that I thought I'd share is a different tack. So we've been doing lots of stuff in our feelings. And this one, we're going to move into our heads and into the logical bit of our heads. There will be slides and syllogisms for anybody who's wants to know what's coming up. So the final part I wanted to share was something from chapter 5, which is about structural editing, to think about how to ensure that your structure is logical. Because one of the problems with writing a PhD, even if you're writing it by publication and then trying to put it together, is that it has to be coherent. It has to be cohesive. It has to all fit together as a single logical idea. But many of us haven't been taught formal logic, and so we don't always have the tools to correct these errors in logic. But also, it's really helpful to understand the ways that logic has an ethical, a philosophical, a cultural, historical basis. So Western logical structures are developed from the ancient Greeks. They're developed by the church fathers. They're developed by Enlightenment philosophers. So we can see a whole range of religious, political, conceptual groups of people who are developing these ways of thinking that we now mean when we say, oh, I want your argument to progress logically. It's also helpful for us to think about other forms of logic that we might be using for our thesis instead, forms that are equally ancient and newer forms that challenge these kind of traditional Western logical structures that I'm kind of talking about that start with the ancient Greeks. If you're doing quantum physics, if you're doing postmodern philosophy, if you're doing indigenous story work, among a whole range of others, you'll be challenging these logical norms. And so knowing what is being implied and being able to sort of say, okay, this is what your readers are expecting, I'm going to do something different, helps you to orient your reader and helps you to address some of the ways where they might get confused because they were assuming one thing was happening and something else is happening. And as long as we're explicit, then everybody can consent, everybody can get on board, everybody can be excited about the way you're making progress. But if you're doing something that, you know, looks scientific or a bit kind of in that scientific mode, you're probably using these kinds of logical norms. And if you know what they are, you can finally crack the code about why your supervisor keeps writing, I'm not sure this is a logical progression in your manuscript. And perhaps the easiest and best known form of logical progression is the syllogism. So we're going to do 3 syllogisms, which is so much fun. And I'll share some slides in a moment. If you don't know about syllogisms, they're a very simple kind of logical structure that can be very helpful to work out what claims you're making, what deductions you're making from those claims, and where you might be going wrong. The ancient Greek philosopher and father of the syllogism, Aristotle, uses the formula, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Correct? Neat logical argument. Yay. But it's also a really good way to run through a logical checklist to see if, you know, to see if we're answering the questions that, of course, we are implicitly asking in, is it logical? What are you assuming? Is that correct? What are the facts? Do you fully understand them? What is the order in which things occur? Is there causation or correlation or just coincidence? And what conclusions can we draw from our argument? And a syllogism helps you sort of test all of those. Because there are lots of ways that things don't quite go right with our logical progressions. For example, when we assume things are true when they're not true, when we think that things are true for everything and they're only true for a specific set of things, that happens a lot, where you're like, yes, okay, this is definitely true. I know this is true from my experience and my research. Oh, but there's this case over here where it doesn't count. That's a place that we often need to address. Or you leave out an assumption. That means you have a serious logical gap. Very, very common as you become the expert. You're so immersed in everything, you know it all, and then you forget to put it on the page. And so the reader is like, I don't understand how you got from here to here. Nothing wrong with your logic. You just haven't held my hand enough through it, haven't carried me in all the steps. So we just need to make sure all the steps are there so that other people feel safe climbing the ladder after you, because we are going somewhere we have never been, because you're contributing new knowledge. Might be easier to see with some examples. So let's do a PowerPoint slide. Slideshow, play from the start. All right, so let's start by identifying some wrong assumptions. This is one thing that we might have done. So this is an error of fact. So we might claim that Aristotle, this is a picture of Aristotle on the screen, died in 322 BCE. The classical period in ancient Greece ended in 323 BCE. And therefore we might argue that the death of Aristotle could have led to the end of the classical period. Okay, sounds logical. Let's have a look. Yes, BCE is before the Common Era. Yes, Aristotle did die in 322. Yes, it is widely accepted that the classical period ended in 323. However, years BCE go backwards in time. So Aristotle's death happens after the end of the classical period. So, oops. All right, basic error. These ones are great when you get these because somebody can just tell you, your supervisor just goes, BCE goes backwards. And you're like, I know that. I'd forgotten. We can get that fixed. So these ones are really nice when you find them because they're super easy to fix. There are some harder ones. Oh, let's see. What's the ones? Okay, overgeneralizations. Many mammals have tails. Notice a nice little bit of hedging language here. Humans are mammals. Therefore, humans probably have tails. We can all see because I'm using nice easy ones. Okay, many mammals have tails. Yes, many mammals do have tails. All have vestiges of tails, but only some mammals actually do have tails. Humans are mammals. Yep, agreed. Therefore, humans probably have tails. So many animals don't have tails that I don't know that I would have felt safe making that assumption. And indeed, if you look at it, no human beings are among mammals that don't have tails. So that one's an overgeneralization. Again, though, kind of easy to notice. One of the things that we'll be coming to quite frequently, so you just can test and you're working out which bits are the place where I need to test, where I need to be clear, where I need to have more evidence, and then you can solve that particular logical challenge. This final one that I'm going to explain, though, is the most difficult. It's identifying a missing step. Sometimes you know so much that it's in your head and it's not in the writing. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know. As we're emerging into new fields of research, if you're working interdisciplinarily, as you're just starting on any new research project, you're like, oh, no, I've got some facts, so I can start drawing some conclusions, and we might not know what we don't know. All right, we've seen this one before. Aristotle died in 322 BCE. The classical period ends in 323 BCE. Therefore, the end of the classical period may have led to the death of Aristotle. We took the advice last time about that error and we fixed it. Oh, sorry. I was just checking that what people were saying in the chat was not, I am confused, but you're not, you're saying great things. All right. Aristotle did die in 322. The classical period did end in 323. Yeah, however, 323 BCE is the death of Alexander the Great. That's why the classical period is sometimes considered to have ended on that date. Aristotle was Alexander the Great's tutor. Therefore, when the new rulers of Athens came in, Aristotle did flee the city and the city-state. But as far as we know, we believe he dies of natural causes. So there's no actual evidence of causation there. So we fixed the chronology problem, but there's a whole lot of other information. And once we know that, we're like, oh, yeah, kind of, it was a nice idea. It looked like it might have been logical, but when we find out more information, get more evidence, it's no longer, it no longer stands up for us. So those are three very simple, very, very simple syllogisms that we can use. And so you can, I mean, there's a practical, of course, these are very simple, and the bigger and more complex our argument, the more steps we need to put in, but also the more steps that could be wrong, not quite right, missing. If you have a tool to address this, though, the idea doesn't have to stress you out. You just can kind of plug through and kind of go, okay, here's a bit where I've identified there's an issue, and I can, draw some of these tables and use something like a syllogism to work this out, and maybe that's given you an aha moment. But also, I'm talking about this ancient Greek stuff in this partly because well-being is often placed in opposition to rigorous, logical, excellent academic achievement. It's assumed that well-being is kind of a bit soft and comfortable. But as Foucault, who we are talking about quite a lot tonight, reminds us in The Care of the Self, drawing on Plato, on Seneca, on Marcus Aurelius, this logic is drawing on a rigorous practice of epimeleia hotu, the cura sui, the cultivation of the self in matters of philosophy, governance, education, making, and being together in ways that support, according to Foucault, support pleasure, desire, care, healing, justice, as well as thinking, debating, and writing. And so it is that sometimes when we do this highly abstruse, logical thinking stuff, we are also doing well-being. And that those two continue to be talking to each other, drawing us into ways of being well, ways of improving ourselves, ways of improving our writing, ways of improving our community's knowledge, while also caring for the self, caring and being cared for through our writing. So all of those things are kind of enfolded into each other, sometimes even in something that's as basic as a little 3-step logical, sequential sort of stress test. Yeah. Those were the things that I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much to people who've asked already about, the sort of useful things. I noticed Narelle's been sharing wonderful things in the chat, so thank you for that. I hope people found those useful. That's the kind of thing that we're going to be talking about in the book. So I hope that there's more of that to come. I've already written like 50,000 words of the 60,000 word book, so things will have to be cut. But you had this so far, yes.
It's so gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. And I love that we've been able to slight less conversation here in the middle, but in some ways conversation between you and everyone who's here today because of the different exercises you have worked us through. And, there's so many comments there in terms of, is this useful? I wish I'd known about this years ago. This is giving me different perspective, which is just beautiful. And it is a beautiful snapshot of Katherine's book, but also the approach with all the books are. And even the edited collections, every chapter, every book is thinking about the proactive, which means we're talking about strategies. Every single chapter in every single book has strategies. It talks through different scenarios and situations. And in the context of Katherine's book, we're talking about writing. In other books, we're talking about relationships. Other books, we're talking about how do we even contemplate putting self-care first? Other books are talking about creativity and movement as acts of well-being. What do they look like for us who are studying or working in academia? There's some beautiful other books coming through in terms of thinking about women and empowerment as well. So many different aspects, but the practical, the strategy coming through, which is just gorgeous. So as we wrap up, we've got 7 minutes left with each other. Katherine, I really want to ask you, you've shared so many insights. There's actually so many t-shirts we're going to get printed with beautiful sayings. And I think when we access this recording and go back and re-watch, I think some of us are going to be writing those down on sticky notes. I know I need to add some sticky notes to the bottom of my monitor to keep that energy coming through. So thank you. It's been a beautiful gift. But to summarize, I love top tips.
I love top tips.
So can we do 3 top tips for writing well and being well while we write?
Absolutely. So I think some of these are sort of similar. I think the first 2 we've already kind of covered, so I'm just going to recapitulate, and the third one is an extra. So the first one is definitely listen to your brain, listen to your body, listen to your gut. They're smart and they often have smart insights, both academic and well-being wise. Yeah, so definitely like listen when our bodies and our brains and our hearts and our guts kind of tell us things. Respect that. Don't waste time and energy worrying about how you should write. Academic writing is messy. It's a compromise. It's literally happening on the edge of what is knowable and possible because you're creating new knowledge. So the writing might also involve uncertainty and problems and tangles and gaps. That is not you being imperfect. That's you doing the work. That's what the work should look like when you're writing at the edge of knowledge. And the third one is take a break at least every 90 minutes. Your eyes, your brain, your muscles, your stomach, your bladder will thank you. Yeah, those are my 3 top tips.
So good. I love those top tips. And it really reminds me of that place of rest, respect for our bodies, our mind, and how it really partners together. And just listening to what is it that our minds and body are telling us in order to really look after ourselves. But then what does that mean for our writing as well? And there's nothing like, my physio tells me a lot about my shoulders are kissing my ears from the writing, and it's listening to the body of going, oh, hang on, I've got a little bit of extra pain here in my shoulders. Maybe I do need to get up and do some stretching now, or just, move off the desk, right through to, scenarios that we've talked through in terms of, well, if you're not feeling so great today, is it the best thing for you to be sitting down and forcing yourself to sit at a desk? And you often hear so many people say, well, today's my research day, or I'm doing my PhD. I'm just going to sit at the desk for 6 hours. I don't think we can do that at all. Even for us, when we have those days where magical words are flowing, it's our body won't allow it, and it's not going to produce the greatest words either. So it's that tension, isn't it, between backwards and forwards?
Totally spend 6 hours. Just take a break every 90 minutes and have a lunch break.
Yeah. Or do something like shut up and write, where it's 25 minutes write, 5-minute break. That 5 minutes, if you're collectively writing with groups that you can talk, sometimes it could be that 5 minutes that you stand up and you walk around. If you're writing with yourself at home, you leave that room. You go and hang out the washing, or you unload the dishwasher, or you go, right, okay, what am I going to do for dinner tonight? And I have a quick look in the pantry, and then you come back to it. And it's just that physical break, but the mind break as well.
And that it isn't a break. It doesn't break anything. It just, it re-energizes. It's sort of recharge. Yeah, I'm trying to think about using the term break, because it feels kind of like things are fragile and you might split them up. But actually all you're doing is like giving yourself a little, re-energization.
It's really nice. And it actually reminds me how we talk about rest. Actually, there's so many different types of rest. So actually this break is a rest. And it's a rejuvenation rest between the writing for the body, which is just gorgeous. So Katherine, I want to thank you so much, because you have gifted us with incredible insights into your upcoming book. Incredible insights that are a gift to the book series as well, which I'm so delighted that you're a part of it. And I am absolutely honored to be the editor, the series editor, and to bring this together. And I know that so many of you are really anticipating this book coming out, which it's due out in next year. So watch this space. The book series has a presence on Routledge, and we've shared the link there. You can see the current 2 books that are out, the 2 that are about to come out, and as we keep generating, they will all sit there. We've shared the link also to stay in touch with Katherine, and she can let you know what's happening in that way. We are both very active on social media, Twitter, Instagram. Of course, we'll be sharing information that way. And of course, I will have the great pleasure of editing this recording and sending it out to all of you. And for those who also registered but weren't able to make it because of the time zone difference, and we will just keep the conversation going on. And we've got 3 more events. Melbourne time Thursday morning, and 2 next week. I've shared the links out there. They're on Eventbrite as well. They are not sold out, so please join us if you would like to share with your colleagues as well. We are all about forming a community and really making sure that our well-being and self-care is something that we have conversations about, and that we help each other to be proactive and to really shift that rhetoric where we're feeling stressed, exhausted, that we're frustrated with a broken system, and we're now starting to take the empowerment back in terms of how we position that. So Katherine, thank you for joining me. Colleagues, thank you for joining me. Chin and Philia and Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us as well. And we will say good night, good morning, depending on where you are in the world, and have a great evening, great morning, great day. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you everybody for your beautiful energy. It's so lovely to be seeing that coming through. Yes.
It's fabulous, fabulous. Thank you everyone. Goodbye.